everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, we have some folks I'm really excited to share with you. This is Kristina and Jonas. They are heavily involved in the Grof world and have some exciting stuff to share with us. So essentially, they're working to translate lots of psychedelic books into a lot of languages. I think that's super important for the movement and getting more inclusion going. Like, what better way to include more populations than get more languages available? So yeah, it's a really wonderful project. Really excited we were able to record this, and really excited we were able to release it so soon. So we recorded this on the 21st, the solstice, and we're releasing it on December 25, Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas. Hope you all enjoy this one. I really had a great time with these two, and I hope to do more with them. They've got some exciting side projects coming. Jonas is looking at a podcast in Italian, which will be really cool. So I think that's it for now. So if you want to wish us a Merry Christmas, maybe join us on Patreon, patreon.com/psychedelics today. Leave us a small monthly donation, and it really helps. If you want to be a little more active, maybe come join us for Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists, our 8-week training program that starts January 7. It is once a week on Thursdays, and it will change your relationship to the psychedelic topic. So hope you enjoy that, and at least check it out over at psychedeliceducationcenter.com. Yeah. And let us know what you think of this episode. Email us over at psychedelicstoday@gmail.com. We are very excited to hear from you whenever you have feedback on our episodes. So feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And I think that's it for now. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on the other side. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. We've got two very interesting folks with some really fantastic projects to share with you today. Jonas and Kristina, welcome to Psychedelics Today. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I wish we could have got you sooner, but here we are, and we're off to the races. So could you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got interested in this kind of psychedelic topic?
Sure. Yeah. I could go first. I just really want to show how much appreciation we have for being on here. We're big fans of your show, and we have some exciting things to share. I was born in Texas to Filipino parents, and I was interested in music and hospital administration, really passionate about healthcare, and I got my master's. And I graduated with a healthcare administration degree, and I was into the whole Western side of medicine. And I found out that it benefits the few and takes from the many. Mm-hmm. And so then I became a piano teacher because I love music.
Yeah.
But what really came is my entry into psychedelics. Being in San Francisco is kind of par for the course. So in my first ayahuasca experience, grandmother told me, we are how the universe experiences itself. Mm. And I shared that with the Oakland City Council, along with a sign that says, free the plants that free the people. As you know, the resolution passed unanimously. And so since then, I have attended conferences and seminars and webinars, really delving into the psychedelic renaissance for a couple of years, 3 years. I was a Zonda volunteer at Envision Festival and at Burning Man. And now I'm on the board of directors for the Women's Visionary Council.
Awesome.
And so right here, I met this guy next to me. And we started the Psychedelic Literacy Fund.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if you can tell from my accent. I'm from Jersey City. Just kidding. I'm Italian. I was born in Rome in 1983. And my father founded a book distribution company. And that explains why I became so passionate about books. So he has been distributing many books about holistic wellness and transpersonal psychology, including the books by Grof in Italy for many years. And my mother is part of an international spiritual faith from India. And so I grew up with this upbringing of like being exposed to different spiritual tradition and knowledge about transpersonal psychology. And then when I was 14 years old, I came across a couple of books that really changed my life. One is The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley, and the other one is LSD, My Problem Child by Albert Hoffman. And so I got interested in having this experience. And after my first experience, I was lucky enough to find the books by Stanislav Grof in the house. And so I started reading them. I remember reading Psychology of the Future, The Cosmic Game, and they really helped me a lot integrate, understand the depth of this experience. So that inspired me also my studies. I chose to study philosophy at the university. And so fast forward 10 years later, was 2008. I went for the first time to the Boom Festival in Portugal.
Nice.
As a volunteer with the Cosmic Care Project, which is similar to the Zen book. And that's when I met Rick Doblin for the first time. And at the time I was already receiving the newsletter. And I went to him. I said, hi, Rick, I read this beautiful book by Maps, The Secret Chief Revealed, about the life of Leo Zev, this incredible pioneer of underground psychedelic therapy. And I told him, I love this book. I would love to translate this book in Italian. Would you be okay with that? And of course, he said, oh, wonderful, absolutely. Get in touch with the office. You can arrange all the paper for that. And this actually happened a few years later. I finally found a publisher who was willing to publish this book. And then it was nice in 2017 at the Psychedelic Science Conference in Oakland. I brought a copy of the Italian edition of this book, and I wrote a dedication and I gave it to Rick. And so this was my first book project. And well, anyway, the other big important change in my life was 2018. So I went to Peru. I had an incredible retreat. And at that point, I really realized I wanted to play a role in helping psychedelic education be more available. And I didn't know actually how to do that. But a few months later, during a trip in the United States, I met Kristina. And soon after, I decided to move to San Francisco. So after that, everything happened very fast. So 2019, we got married. I applied for my green card. And this year in February, I got my green card. And so here I am on Psychedelics Today.
Fantastic.
I just want to underscore that we have an inherently global mission. We're an Italian and a Filipino living in America, trying to translate the work of a Czech psychiatrist.
That's wonderful. Yes. I really appreciate it. It's not easy, right? Like there's so many languages that this needs to be translated into. And I appreciate you two being a role model and kind of, leading that way. I've thought a lot about how to even accomplish this, and it's so complicated. Me being a little bit too American, like the idea of translating is just daunting. But thankfully, y'all have some great international experience and understand how this stuff works probably a little better. So, yeah. So where do we want to go? Do we want to start talking about the Psychedelic Literacy Fund?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, to just give an overview of what actually we're trying to do and why. So our vision is to have important books about psychedelic therapy translated in different languages, because we realize there is a language barrier and many people in other parts of the world have difficulty accessing this information.
Yeah.
So you can easily see this if you go like on Amazon from different countries, like Amazon in Italy or in France or in Germany and Spain, and you type some words like MDMA or LSD or psychedelic therapy. You don't get the same results that you would get on Amazon in the United States. And these are the places where people go to look for information. So how to address that? The idea would be to really translate these important books that we have in English in different languages. And then this year, we try to figure out a way to do this in a impactful way. So I learned this year about donor advice fund. I didn't know what a donor advice fund is until last year, probably. And so just to give an idea, what we did is we created a donor advice fund. And a donor advice fund in the United States is a charitable giving vehicle administered by a public charity, created to manage charitable donations on behalf of individuals, families, or organizations. So in other words, a donor advice fund is an account at a public charity where an individual can make a charitable gift and enjoy an immediate tax benefit, and at the same time retain advisory privilege about how to disburse these resources. So we chose to open this donor advice fund because since the beginning we had the vision of having a collaborative initiative, something that other people could join. And we proposed the idea to a few friends from the Zendo project, and they were excited. So we put together some money, and we opened this donor advice fund, which we call Psychedelic Literacy Fund. And we did it with a foundation based in San Francisco. It's called the Rudolf Steiner Foundation Social Finance.
Cool.
And that was the beginning of it. Yeah. So the basic idea is really to educate the next generation of therapists or global psychonauts, and also the general public. And really, we thought about what kind of books we can. There are so many. So we started to make a list. And this project has been also inspired by attending a beautiful workshop in San Francisco at CIS with Chris Bache. He was there to present his new book, LSD and the Mind of the Universe. And by the way, I'm very glad you had him on the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the book launch was beautiful. And the day after, he gave a workshop, a full day workshop, which we attended. And at the end, I was in line to speak with him. And the person in front of me was discussing something. And Chris Bache said, well, my book is right now under translation for Czech language, Czech Republic. And when I got there and I was ready to speak with him, I immediately said, look, I already read your book and this workshop has been beautiful. I think it would be wonderful to have your book also in Italian, and I think this could happen. And he was very enthusiastic about the idea, so we kept in touch. And this really sparkled my excitement about launching an initiative to translate a number of books, not just in Italian, in different languages. And so then we came to the point of choosing like which one would be the first one. I'll let Kristina share which one we chose and why.
Yes, so we are currently focusing on obtaining agreements with translators and publishers for the Italian edition of Stanislav Grof's The Way of the Psychonaut, volumes 1 and 2. And this feels like such a pinnacle of this ideas on this pioneering work over 60 years of research. And it's culminating in this. It's the manual. It's going to be the manual for the Grof legacy training, and so it makes it so important to have this knowledge and wisdom out there to pass on and keep the torch lit and transfer it to the next generation. So we decided to translate this book of Grof, and I know Joe and Kyle. You've had quite experience with Grof, and I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I've got my first in-person encounter with Stan was actually in a breathwork workshop in New York at a Omega Institute. It was one of those insight and opening retreats with Jack Kornfield.
Wow.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So Stan and Jack were up there kind of doing their whole super darshan. It was incredible. Later on, I got to see Stan work with my breathwork partner, and it was dazzling. Like I can't even really describe the kind of fluidity with which Stan could deal with material presented from the breather.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like Yeah, next level. But clearly he had been at it for many, many decades. And, I don't know that I'll ever get to that skill level.
Wow.
But it was just mind-boggling. And just watching him open up over the course of the next couple hours after that was incredible. Yeah, and I've had some experiences with Stan since then. It's wildly generous, so kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think he at one point loaded my thumb drive up with all sorts of stuff that he probably wasn't supposed to share.
Nice.
This is amazing. Thank you, sir.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, it's kind of the majority of it. Had some really nice meals with him. And at one point I asked him about, alcohol addiction or alcohol use disorder, alcoholism, whatever. And he said that really for the work to stick, for the inner work to stick, the individual really needs to be sober for about 30 days, which is incredibly hard, right? Like, and then do the work. It's like, man, how do you even just buy 30 days? Like it's not an easy task. So I think that would, probably improve outcomes for both, breathwork based therapies and psychedelic based therapies. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like kind of trying to steer a few friends in the right direction. And this kind of thing comes up once in a while. It's like, well, I don't really know how to tell you have to be sober for that long. It's like definitely not that easy of a conversation. Yeah. Anyway, that's the bulk of my stories. I really wish we had Stan on the show before his stroke, but maybe we'll be able to make something work eventually.
Yeah. I guess I'll chime in. My story really kind of started after a really profound psychedelic experience, kind of stumbled across Stan's work. And Jonas, I know we kind of connected on this in the past of just stumbling across his work while we're, in the middle of like maybe like a dark night of the soul or spiritual emergence and being like, wow, this guy really understands it. But I remember I was lifeguarding and just reading LSD Doorway to the Numinous. And, it just really helped me kind of contextualize what I was going through and everything that he was saying from his like case reports of his clinical studies, and just resonated so much with like some of my experience. And I said, you know what, like this guy, I feel like I know what he really knows what the hell he's talking about. And I just thought like, this is the path that I want to go down. Something about his work just really resonated with me. And so I enrolled in a undergrad in a transpersonal psychology program in Burlington, Vermont, and ended up meeting our breathwork teachers, Lenny and Elizabeth Gibson. And, it was just really interesting that they were even part of the college. When I signed up for the college, I had no idea that they were there. And really got to study under them. And I remember I had to do a capstone project, and it's kind of like a culmination of all your work throughout your undergrad. And, I was thinking about doing something with like local plant medicine. I was studying with an Abenaki elder, and I, wanted to put together like a catalog of Northeastern plants for the medicinal benefits. And something else kind of swept over me, and it actually was for my first breathwork session about teaching. And so I ended up creating a course called the Stanislav Grof's Psychology of Extraordinary Experiences. And thankfully and fortunately, we were able to have Stan Skype into the session, one of the classes for Q&A, and just to kind of describe his work. And I remember one thing he said, he's like, I'm approaching, I think he was turning 85 or 84. And he said, this is the time when you start to, think about your legacy and how you're passing it down. And just thinking about, the work that you've done throughout your life, and, just really fortunate that, this work's being carried through a college course like this. But I remember the first time I actually met Stan was at a breathwork session up at Capalio up in Massachusetts. And they were doing like the pre-screening, and he called my name up, and I was like, oh shit. And he sat down with me. He's like, I see that you checked off, spiritual emergence and near-death experience. And I was like, oh man, he's going to let me breathe. But I told him I've been working with Lenny and Elizabeth, and I'm pretty solid, and he kind of gave me the approval. But I remember being so anxious of like, oh no, is he going to tell me I can't do this workshop, because I put that on my health form. So that's a little background story of how I got like interested in Stan's work and how it's kind of been part of my early life there.
Thank you for sharing.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'll share my story of how I actually got in touch with Stan this year. So it was May 2020, and I asked my friend Mike Mergolis to introduce me to Susan, the director of The Way of the Psychonaut, because at the time I was helping the United Nations Association Film Festival based in Palo Alto to reach out to director of films and documentaries to submit for the film festival. And I thought The Way of the Psychonaut could be, one of them. So I got in touch with Susan, and I suggested to submit the documentary, which later she did. And I also said, and by the way, Susan, I also want to inform Stan that I'm planning to publish his book, LSD Psychotherapy, in Italian. And can you forward my message to him somehow? And she did. But what I didn't expect is that the following day, Stan would write an email to me and telling, Jonas, I appreciate your initiative, and I want to let you know that I have the foreign rights for this book, so you can discuss this directly with me. And by the way, I'm sending you also the PDF of The Way of the Psychonaut, in case you want to consider. And so I was very surprised and pleased, and I said, thank you very much. I'm glad to know I can arrange this directly with you. And I'm definitely also interested in publishing also The Way of the Psychonaut through a publisher in Italy. And so we started a correspondence and exchanging emails about this. But something that really surprised me is when I realized that right now he is in Germany with Brigitte in a city called Wiesbaden near Frankfurt. And this is the city where my mother grew up, and my uncle is still living there. And Kristina and I were planning to go to Europe this summer. And in fact, we went. And one of the places where I wanted to go was also in Germany to visit the member of my family. And so I took this as a sign that that could be a good opportunity to meet in person. And we told Stan and Brigitte, and they were very happy. And they said, yeah, of course, we can have dinner outside. And so this summer has been incredible. Like we went by car from Italy to Germany, and on the same day that we were getting to their house, we were a few miles from their place. We saw this beautiful rainbow in the sky.
This is open field.
Yeah.
So
there was this feeling of magic and incredible events. Just the fact of being able to go to Europe this summer with all the travel ban, has been kind of incredible.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, to be able to meet them in person, they told us we were the first person that they met, physically in the same place after several months.
And Brigitte is a great cook.
Oh yeah, she is. It was one of our highlights, the dinner we had there. Yeah. And
all these synchronicities, all these signs and opening to the mysteries and such generosity.
There's this chapter in The Way of the Psychonaut, Volume 2, about synchronicities. And we really felt like surrounded by this kind of interesting events that were signaling like that's something appropriate to do right now for us in this moment of our lives. Mm-hmm. And the first sign was really the enthusiasm that we found in the friends that we invited to create the Donor Advice Fund together at the beginning.
Yeah.
But the other interesting event is that how we found our major donor that decided to join us in this. And because we met another couple this summer. He's Italian, she's from Czech Republic. They live in Prague. And we spent a weekend with them in Italy, and we told them about this idea of translating books in different languages. And a few days after, they went back to Prague and they spoke about this with a friend of them. And this person said, well, my boss is actually, he had the opportunity to meet Stan Grof many years ago in the United States. And I think he might be interested in this. And basically, a few weeks after, we got in touch with this person, and he decided to contribute. And we would never imagine that this would arrive from a person that is living in Czech Republic. And but the most beautiful thing is that we learn about this encounter is that this person moved to the United States many years ago, and he ended up staying in the same ranch where Stan was at the time, and he was there helping as a gardener. And after some time, Stan went to him and said, "Look, I think you have some very incredible skills. I would like to give you this money, and I would like you to start a business." And eventually, this person was able to start a business that was very successful. And so he was able to create a company in the United States and another one after in the Czech Republic. And so he really was touched by the generosity of Stan, that he wanted to pay it forward and have his work, more widely available. And we were so touched about learning about this. And that's also how having the donor advice fund was very handy, because one of the questions he had for us was, is there a way to have a tax deduction if I make a donation? And we said, well, luckily, yes, we created a donor advice fund. So you can donate to the fund and you will get a paper, a receipt.
Psychedelic Literacy Fund allows for that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like full circle. We started this in May with the idea of having something that could be collaborative. And a few months later, we started meeting these people that were excited about this.
So it was our first major donor who was able to contribute to the Italian edition of The Way of the Psychonaut by paying it forward. And so we imagine that this is the way that these funds will arise. And somebody has read Stan's work and wants to contribute, or somebody has no idea, but then picks up the book. And so this is the way to make this gift of love. It's a gift of impact, but it's really a gift of love to honor the work and the legacy. And we're also accepting non-monetary contributions as well. Like, we would like to collaborate with, if you have listeners out there who would want to help in the publishing or the translating, or any ways that we can contribute to keep this legacy alive.
Yeah, something that was very interesting for me is that we didn't know, but basically right now in Germany, volume 1 of The Ways of the Psychonaut is already published, but because of COVID, they had so little sales that they're having difficulties publishing the volume number 2. And we know how important this is for them, for Stan and Brigitte, because first of all, because of the Grof legacy training, this book will be the main text that will be used for the training, but also because they're in Germany and they really would like the training to be able to start there. And so we didn't know that Stan, basically, in order to support the publisher, was okay giving up his royalties. And we just thought, wait a minute, like, he gave such a big contribution. Like, we wouldn't want him to give up his royalties. Like, it would be nice if like, this book can just be published and with the support of the community. And so we said, okay, let's do this. Like, let's find a way to help having the book published in different languages. Another language they really care, they would like to be translated, is French. There is already a publisher available, and there are already a number of therapists that will be available to teach the Grof legacy training. And the publisher said, we really had a lot of difficulties this year with COVID, and we were wondering if anybody could help us with the cost of the translation. And so we just realized this is was way more than what we were able to do just by ourselves. And so we said, okay, let's find a way to share the message, especially because next year Stan will be 90 years old.
90 years old.
It's amazing, Yeah. It's and everything he cares about, I think, is like to really have his work available out there so that can continue to have an impact. And so I think this work really deserves to be widely available.
And I want to say that it's not just the book. We also want to do the audiobook.
Yeah.
And also the voiceover for
the
film in different languages. I mean, it's translated with subtitles, and we would like to fund the voiceover of the film. So it's something that we're working on as well. So audiobook, the ebook, and the actual in-print book.
Awesome. Do you guys have a timeline of like when you're trying to get this out, and if people are listening, how could they help to make a donation for this project? And just when are you trying to shoot for all this to kind of happen?
That's a great question. So So Stan is turning 90 on July 1st. And so the dream would be able to hand him the book translation for his birthday. So we're launching this campaign in January for €100,000 to cover the German, the French, and the Italian editions of in all the formats. And that would be the dream, to have it.
Yeah, I think as a deadline, we're hoping to reach this goal, or at least partially, by the end of March, because this would give time to the publisher to start with the translation and move everything forward with printing, and at least by the end of this year, be able to really ship the copies, the paper copies, to them, which we know they would be very happy.
And the Grof legacy training is set to begin next year in different countries.
Yeah. So definitely this is a long-term project. Like, we envision this going on for the next 10, 15 years. And we have a number of other books after Chris Bache, LSD, and The Mind of the Universe is one of the first ones we want to start working on 2022. But we also want to say that we don't want this to be our full-time job. We have our own careers, and we want to do this, like in our
spare time.
Actually, yeah.
It's a little pet project.
So that's also is the idea. Is like, we were so glad to have the opportunity to share this with you on Psychedelics Today, because the idea is really to put together people that love the work of Stan and are just excited to contribute to something that we know will make him very happy.
Yes, and other bibliophiles.
Right.
Either of you identify?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Maybe a few too many books. Yeah. I won't really admit it to being a problem yet, but yeah. So are you planning to do orders? Like, will people donate money and hopefully kind of have a pre-order for the book? Is that an option?
Oh, great question. So we know that in Brazil, the people that translated the book, they were able to raise the funds in this way. They did a crowdfunding. People could pre-order the book, and they exceeded the goal, and so they were able to complete the translation. And right now, I think they either already printed the book or they're in the process of printing it. So that's an example of that model, where they had a classical crowdfunding campaign with one of these platforms, and raised small amounts, and likely, the community in Brazil that is following holographic breathwork, transpersonal psychology, it's very big. So in a few months, they were able to reach the goal. Our vision is to do something a little bit different, because if we would do a campaign on Indiegogo or in one of these crowdfunding campaigns, first of all, a major donor who would like to join couldn't have a tax deduction, as in the case of a donor advice fund. And also, to do a crowdfunding campaign, it's really a lot of work. Like, it takes one person or more people just to be there and replying to comments and questions. And I know this because my brother did a crowdfunding campaign some years ago, and it was a full-time job, basically. And just because this is not what we want to do the whole day for the next months, we just thought to have a different strategy and say, let's do a donor advice fund and try to have, a few or maybe more people that can contribute in a significant way. And then when the book will be available, people can just buy it. And also, our idea is to inspire other publishers around the world who can start their own crowdfunding, and so there is something that really inspired us this year. We had a conversation with Bill Melton, which is one of the people that was interviewed by Susan for the documentary. And we told him about our idea, and he had the idea.
He had so many ideas for us. And
he introduced us to a person that has been very instrumental in having the Course in Miracle translated in 27 languages. A Course in Miracle, yeah. And so he arranged a Zoom call with her, so we could learn more about how she managed to achieve this incredible success, to have a book translated in so many languages. And she told us that really was step by step. They started with one language and then another language, and then translator reached out and wanted to help, and then donor reached out and wanted to contribute. And this was very inspiring for us. We said, okay, let's start.
Let's do it this way. Are you familiar with A Course in Miracles?
A bit, yeah. It's channeled text, I believe, from Boston. But that's about as much as I've really got. I know it's wildly popular on the global stage. And
it's also very, very thick. So it's
enormous, yeah.
So to translate it in 27 languages is
no small feat.
You really have to be called to do it. And so they followed these steps, step by step. And this is the feeling of how we're doing it, and just following the signs, and things are unfolding naturally.
Yeah. Amazing. It's really amazing. Like a very ambitious project, obviously, right? But, you're seeing things just kind of unfold appropriately, and thankfully you're taking it as kind of a nice part-time venture, it seems, and you're able to, still handle it as a part-time venture, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And you said, you didn't say Ben Malcolm. You said another name, Bill Malcolm?
Bill Melton.
Melton.
Melton. Okay, great. Yeah. Have you met Ben Malcolm in Los Angeles? That's why I was like, he's really great. Really great. So, I was getting a little confused.
Introduce us. That would be great.
Cool. Great. So, Psychedelic Literacy Fund largely is a translation publication effort, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a philanthropic initiative, because we are not going to publish the book ourselves. We are not going to have any income from sales of the book.
Yeah.
What we will do with the funds, we will try to distribute them and have the publishers in France, in Germany, in Italy have everything they need to at least cover part of the cost, because these publishers are willing to contribute. Of course, they will have an income over the years from the sales of the book. But right now, because the book is very big, and with this crisis with COVID, something that maybe would be affordable to do by themselves is a little bit more challenging. And so we want to give that little help, or the help they need. Every publisher has a different situation right now.
Yes.
That would allow this book to be available, hopefully by the end of the next year. And I want to share with you, for example, how we did it for the Italian edition. So we put some funds from us, and then we had this donor contributing. And then, because a donor advice fund can only give to a nonprofit, we had Stan reaching out to Rick Doblin, asking if MAPS could help us somehow as a fiscal sponsor. And Rick replied immediately saying, "Oh, of course we can help. We don't even need to establish a fiscal sponsorship.
Because it's part of their mission.
It's part of our mission to spread your work." And so Jonas and Kristina can just send whatever they raise to MAPS, and we will distribute the funds to the publishers. And this was so wonderful. Like, we really appreciated the collaboration, and also like the timely response from Rick that was immediately available to support this. And so this is what actually happened. Once we gather enough, we send through the Donor Advice Fund. The funds went to MAPS, and the chief financial officer of MAPS, forward sent the funds. Part to Stan is advance royalties, and part for the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And so this would be the model, basically, and this is what we envision.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's interesting to hear you guys, like, I know we chatted in the past how influential Stan's work has been, and that's been a huge influence for Joe and I to take on Psychedelics Today. And, it was really kind of part of the beginning of Psychedelics Today. I was thinking about, his work with breathwork and just psychedelics. And I wonder what it is about Stan's work that, like, why do we want to, like, kind of spread his message? Why is Stan's work, like, so important to get out there to the world?
So, that's a very good question. For me, first of all, it's his capacity to really connect different fields, like from quantum physics to psychiatry, history of religion. This is really remarkable. Like, the depth of his knowledge is so wide. And I think it can speak to so many people coming from different fields. I remember as a teenager sharing the content of the books by Grof with friends that were studying physics, and friends were studying philosophy, friends were studying psychology, and all of them could find something they could really appreciate this depth and this incredible knowledge. And he has met the most incredible minds, Joseph Campbell and Fritjof Capra and so many others, Jack Kornfield. So I think that his work can really speak to many people, and that's why I think, first of all, that's one of the reasons why his books has already been translated in so many different languages. But interestingly, the books that focus the most about psychedelic, like LSD psychotherapy, has not been translated in so many languages, because for publisher, it's in many countries, it's a little bit, challenging to come out with a title like that.
Right.
And so that's unfortunate, and we want to help publisher overcome that resistance. And first of all, now it's a completely different historical time where there's more interest for this. But also there is the financial burden of publishing a book now. Kristina can also share something more, I think.
About Why Grof is that I think it's the same thing that inspired Susan Hess-Leger to make the documentary, which is not only the depth but also all the deep connections that he makes in helping us understand our consciousness and why we're here on Earth at this time, why we've chosen this reality. And I feel that definitely now in 2020, we're kind of going through a spiritual emergency of humanity. And we need this knowledge to get us out of the birth perinatal matrix too. Anyone else feel that it's BPM2 symptoms?
Yeah.
And so it's really timely and appropriate. And so if it's translated into other languages, we can help humanity to overcome and get through this tunnel.
Yeah.
There's something else that comes to my mind, which is a book can be a harm reduction tool, especially if you live in a country or in a community where you don't know many people that can share information about some substances. Just having a book at the right time, can really help you integrate a difficult experience and change the course of your life. Like, definitely this has been the case for me. I didn't know anyone in my community at the time that could really guide me. And these books played that role. And I feel they changed the course of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, to imagine you're a foreigner in some country on a difficult psychedelic trip, and the one book you find is in your language and it describes exactly what you're going through. And it gives an explanation of what's going on transpersonally. And you're able to make insights about the challenges and integrate it to become a more whole person and live your life. And now imagine that this book is only available to those who read and understand English.
Yeah.
So I want to help bridge that gap.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm just thinking about that time, just being able to stumble across his book. I'm like, oh man, thank God this person wrote this book. It was definitely felt like a roadmap out of my experience, which was so helpful. So I'm glad, being able to translate it and give it to others that may not always have access to it because of the language barrier there. I feel like that's a huge blessing for those that might need it someday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And also, especially now, there's a lot of conversation about diversity, how to increase diversity in the psychedelic community. Maybe the way to do that is literally to speak their language, like to do that extra effort to make this information available so that, a more diverse crowd can join the psychedelic community.
Yeah, I mean, even if your parents are from Lithuania and you want them to read these books, but it's not translated in Lithuanian, we could, as their children, we can give this knowledge to them in their native language. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And think about like what could happen if we start getting it in Farsi, Arabic, Hebrew, to like potentially cure many, many, many generations of trauma and conflict.
Yeah.
Hope that would be
Yes.
the hope, right? But
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
like it would be amazing. And I don't know if you remember this. Stan at one point said his in one of his interactions with what's the name of the guru that Kristina was spending a lot of time with? Muktananda.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Then Muktananda said, your mission is to bring
Muktananda,
spirituality back to Eastern Europe.
Muktananda.
Muktananda, Swami Muktananda. Yeah. And yeah, it looks like he has done that. Like Russia has its own breathwork training program. And I think is totally independent from GTT, which is really, really interesting in and of itself.
I'm glad you're saying this. It came to my mind a conversation I had with Susan a few months ago about the idea of having The Way of the Psychonaut, the movie, available also with subtitles in Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
And she replied, very excited about the idea. And she actually said, well, it would be wonderful to have Arabic and also Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was such a wonderful idea, you know. So now the documentary is available already in Spanish, in German, in Czech, in Italian, in French, in Portuguese, and Chinese. So it wouldn't take much to make also subtitles in Arabic and Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what we are envisioning, you know. Like that would be really wonderful. Really showing like the psychedelic community, it's a global community actually. And I really had the opportunity to see that this is true. Like through traveling in different countries, I was finding people that are following what's happening in the psychedelic community everywhere in the world. And so I think it would be a beautiful sign to really show that by the time Stan will be 90 years old, you know, the community is able to spread this information and make his legacy widely available around the world.
Would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the mental health crisis isn't language specific. I think it happens everywhere. And so if we can do one thing to help make the world more trauma neutral, like we talk about the environment being carbon neutral, you know, this is from Rick Doblin, is to be trauma neutral. And for me, it's the mental health crisis like hits close to home for me because my sister suffers from severe mental illness for the past decade. I think it was maybe it was spiritual emergency, but she's diagnosed with erotomania, and she's been in and out of mental facilities for the past 11 years. And I believe that psychedelics may have contributed to her state, but they also might be the solution because my dream is that the family has MDMA, family assisted psychotherapy. Might be kind of a big stretch in Texas, but I'm still willing to hold that dream.
Nice. It will come, you know, like it has to come at the federal level. And there's plenty of people in Texas who are interested in making it happen. Texas is a surprisingly strong psychedelic hotspot. Austin in particular, but I've heard plenty about Dallas and Houston as well. So it's coming.
Yeah.
That's promising.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a moment here. Okay. So psychedelics being able to somehow kind of trigger an acute, you know, mental state that isn't really perceived as helpful. You know, like you might get a diagnosis and get hospitalized or something, but it can also be possibly the cure. How do you like to describe that, Kristina?
Yes. So it's what is it? The quote about the funeral pyre?
Yeah. The full expression of an emotion is also the funeral pyre of that emotion. Something along those lines.
Yeah, it's in the documentary.
And so I feel that what happens a lot of times is that we're not allowed to go to the full extent of that emotion and have the funeral pyre. It's kind of like either we or some external force cuts it off.
Yeah.
And it's basis of fear, and that fear is conditioned in us to say this, whatever it is, this darkness is bad. And so if we're conditioned to say that it's bad, then we run away from it. It's not allowed to express its fullness. And so I remember this part in the movie The Way of the Psychonaut where the person is going through some really dark state, and Stan just goes up to him and says, "Hello, who are you?" And just kind of sits with him, and it changes his demeanor from something very scary into something more curious. And it's that curiosity that psychedelics can help with, to kind of lessen the fear of the unknown, and then also bring up the curiosity and that capacity for exploration. And for my parents, they're from the Philippines, which we can talk about. And, and they came to the United States dreaming of a better life for their daughters, which is why my sister was, she went through medical school. She was a pediatrician in New York, which also, I think, partly triggered her of all the stress.
Yeah.
So now it's a time for us to reconcile these ways and be open to different ways of thinking.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about like your parents' maybe perspective on being Filipino, like about psychedelics?
Well, growing up, it's a lot. It's very much not talked about. There are some things that we talk about and things we don't talk about. And if we do, we pretend that they're not happening. So drugs are bad. They're staunch Republicans and very devout Catholics. And so this is the way things are done, and it's for your safety, which really comes out into control. And control is from fear. So this is why I'm in San Francisco right now.
Right.
But no, seriously, is that I think that the dream of it being available in Texas and really long term would be in the Philippines, because it could really
It's a
help
global
all
vision.
that's happening.
It has to be a global vision. Like everybody's kind of focused on Europe or the US, but it's like there's so much more happening and so many more people that need serving, healing.
Yeah, so we want to expand our mind beyond North America and the United States.
Yeah, great. And I really appreciate that you're taking that approach. It's kind of hard for I think Kyle and I, as white Americans, to really understand the full global picture sometimes, but we do try and we do talk about it. I think that was one of our critiques on the show recently, was that we're a little too American focused. It's like, kind of, but we try at least,
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate the international voices you've included, and Kwasi Aduse.
Kwasi is unbelievable. He's on our advisory board.
Exactly.
Yeah, really, really smart guy. Very, very thankful for him being on our team.
Diversity in psychedelics, building the global movement. It's really, the psychedelics is really uniting us. But first we have to translate it in the different languages.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I don't know about you, Kyle, but I'm thinking about releasing this episode on Christmas Day.
Oh.
And then we can hopefully have people want to give you some Christmas gifts of funds for your project. I know will you be able to accept funds now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the fund is established. So
this would be
there's
wonderful.
this website that we decided to create just for people, make it easier to understand what it is and how to do it. But eventually there's a link that goes to the Rudolf Steiner Foundation Social Finance, which is the charity that manages the Donor Advice Fund. And so that's how people can do it by themselves. and we're willing to help if people have additional questions. But really, it's very straightforward. And so it doesn't take much.
It's all set up.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. I mean, this is just
So
a
sweet,
generosity themed podcast. It's like
well,
paying
it's,
it forward.
I'm grateful that you're doing this work. So like I only wish I could do more to spread Stan's work.
You are.
Yeah.
I think just having us, it's huge.
It's huge.
I mean, I moved to the United States recently. I know many people in the community because even if I was in Italy, I was all the time listening to podcasts and reading what's happening in the United States.
So yeah, talk about how you.
Yeah, actually, that was something I wanted to share with you, how I learned about Psychedelics Today. So I came to the United States in 2016 for 3 months in holiday. And so at the time I was visiting friends. I was in Oregon and a beautiful farm. And I wanted to have something to listen while I was, spending time outdoor. And I came across your podcast, and I had wonderful days just listening to beautiful interviews and with a lot of humor and great conversations. And at the same time, being outdoor in this country where marijuana is legal. It's been legal for a long time. And for me, coming from Italy, it was like, wow, is this possible? I'm here surrounded by these amazing plants, which are legal. And there are these guys talking openly on a podcast, interviewing all these people. And I became immediately a huge fan. I think I listened all your first, 100 episodes in a row.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And then when I visited Jonas at the farm, we were listening to your podcast. And it was so beautiful to think that what was feeding our ears was feeding the plants.
Yeah.
And it was just going and recycling and going in. And the plants were really happy.
Oh, wow.
And making people happy, right?
I love that.
It really goes full circle.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. It's really nice to hear. Yeah, we don't often get to hear from folks that had that kind of an experience, and it's really nice, validating.
Yeah, I think the contribution you're giving in the community, it's huge.
Totally.
And I think that many times people don't have the chance to share with you how meaningful and how impactful or inspiring has been a certain episode. But from my experience, I can say, it's been incredibly inspiring to know that these conversations are happening widely open on a podcast. And so I think it's a huge impact. So I really want to give credit for what you're doing. And now there are a bunch of other podcasts that came out recently doing similar kind of interviews. And this is really something we need. I always had a passion about journalism, and I think a podcast for the times we are now, it's really a good tool. Something people can listen while driving or while doing something else. So I think you chose a very good vehicle, and I think you're having fun while doing it, which is the most important part, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, if it wasn't fun, that would be a really different project. That's for sure. And I think you're right. Like podcasting allows portability. It allows a lot more like a nuance than reading an article too.
Yeah.
Because you get, inflection, I guess verbal micro expressions, stuff like that.
Yes.
And you get a lot more data that way. And, in our dark pandemic times, we get a lot more connection, I think, from hearing someone's voice. Like I just last night started listening to a friend's podcast from years ago, and it was just so nice to hear his voice, and him digging into topics he's really into. It's just really amazing.
I'm kind of curious about how you, Joe and Kyle, had this idea to start the podcast. Is it 4 years ago?
Yeah, about 4.5 years ago. Yeah, May 2016, and the goal wasn't much. It was just to have more conversation about Stan and holotropic breathwork, because I thought it was criminal how little Stan was being discussed.
Yes.
Thus, why I'm so excited about what you're doing. Yeah. Kyle and I got linked up from our breathwork teachers. So we share Lenny and Elizabeth as teachers, mentors, and it's been really nice. to have them helping us for so long. And then eventually they kept asking me if I knew Kyle, and I was like, I don't know. I think I don't. And eventually we got on a phone call. Kyle, if I remember right, I was trying to talk you out of going to grad school.
I think we were both talking about grad school because what we were working at Burlington College was a master's in transpersonal psychology with like an emphasis in psychedelic studies. And I think, Joe and I, we were talking about like, oh, this might be a good opportunity. I think like Lenny was trying to convince you to do it for a little bit. And so
he was trying to convince me to get a master's forever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like where it started. And then I think we both agreed not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But we did talk about like, having, audio files from workshops and stuff and Lenny's talks. And we wanted to put that together. And then I don't know what happened. That idea, I guess, went out the window, and we started talking about breath work and Grof and how some of his work didn't show up at some of the early conferences that we were going to. And just thinking like, how do we infuse like our work with breath work and, kind of Stan's lineage there with the Gibsons, just kind of back into the conversation. And so, that's been, the starting point, and I think part of the goal here as well.
I feel like we've been very successful. If that was our only goal, I think we've completed it. But we have a long way to go, I think, because the vision isn't just sharing Stan's work anymore.
Yeah,
it's a lot more than
it's
that.
Obviously changed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But what a wonderful entry point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I feel so lucky that I found the Gibsons, and they were able to help me through my path, and now I'm helping a lot of people, using very similar stuff that they used. It's really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And something I want to recommend to everybody listening, if you haven't done that already, like watch The Way of the Psychonaut.
Mm-hmm.
It came out just a few months ago, and it's an incredible documentary. Like the way it's narrated and the kind of information that all the people have been interviewed share. It's really, really entertaining, and it's inspiring. So for anyone who is not familiar with the work of Stan Grof or want to know more, that's an incredible film to watch.
And also listen to the interview with Joe and Kyle.
Yeah,
with Susan.
The episode you did with Susan, with the director,
wonderful.
Was really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a really great time with that one. You could tell Susan's been doing a lot of work for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that she's really, really passionate about it.
Absolutely. Incredible dedication.
And also believing in the legacy and really wanting to immortalize this work, and so that it's available to everyone.
There is this beautiful book by Ralph Metzner, Six Pathway of Destiny. I don't know if you ever came across it.
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
So basically, Ralph Metzner categorized human attitude and inspiration in life in terms of careers and work in 6 different categories, and one of them is the historian or the teacher, and so journalism falls under this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important to have people in the psychedelic community that feel like keeping alive the memory of the elders and the memory of the pioneers, people that spend their whole life sharing this information in spite of the fact of not being able to fully exercise their profession in this field. Like if you think about Stan, if it wasn't for prohibition, he could have been, I don't know, the chief of an institution or a hospital. And and instead, when this became illegal, instead of going into something else, as many other people did, he just kept alive the torch of the potential of non-ordinary state of consciousness through holotherapy breathwork, trainings, books, conferences. And it has so much value. And so now that the climate is changing and there are all these investors entering into the space and creating these new companies, it's really important also to honor and acknowledge, the people that allowed us to get to be here and to understand this experience to the point that we could change ourselves and be mature enough to think about how to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Standing on the shoulders of giants and giving them credit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really envision one day having a museum for Stan Grof, either virtual or physical, but
he has things that need to be
so
preserved.
much. Yeah, like the film is doing a good job in telling many things that otherwise people would never know, but there's so much more. And this summer we also went to Prague to the psychiatric hospital where Stan Grof started his LSD research.
That was amazing. Cool. Because the friend that we stayed with, she's from Czech Republic, and then her husband is from Italy, and so that's how we connected. She was able to speak in Czech to the security guard.
Because at the time, people were not allowed to enter, but because she spoke with the security guard, they made an exception and they allow us to enter. And
we were running around like we were part of the hospital.
And what I want to say is, like, this place is not just a building. It's a group of dozens of buildings, and there are a lot of trees. So it's really a beautiful environment. So I really understand what Stan says. Beautiful. This was a really ideal place to do LSD research because people could get out and you would have all these beautiful trees and these gardens. And to be there was very meaningful. And before leaving, the guard told us that there was a section of the building that was a little bit like a museum. And there was the whole history of that psychiatric hospital.
Really?
Oh my
gosh.
God.
The time it was created.
It was a beautiful exhibition.
Beautiful exhibition. So actually the exhibition started with some panels, some frames telling how mental illness has been treated in the past times, like millennials. Yeah. In the prehistoric times and then the Middle Age, back until our days, our times.
Very well researched.
The next were all about this specific psychiatric hospital, the different phases, World War I, World War II, and the next decades. And unfortunately, there was nothing about Stan Grof.
The only thing missing was about the fact that Stan was there.
But I envision this changing one day. One day psychedelic research will really be also even more mainstream of what it's now. And eventually, I think it would be possible to tell to them, like, would you want to include that Stan started his research here?
They're going to have to edit it.
So,
did they have anything on like the psychedelic research that they did there?
Nothing.
No. I took picture of everything that was there because I wanted to make sure I could look at everything and make sure. But no, they went very detailed in all the decade, how it was in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, and what they were focused on.
Nothing. But I think once it becomes legal, they'll have to do some editing.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure there's still a lot of stigma hanging around.
I'm feeling like we should have a conversation in a few months about how to get a museum for Stan going in Prague.
I love that.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk in June
months.
or something. Yeah, or March even. Yeah, once you have time, let's set up a time to chat about that. Since you've got your fund already, like I think that's a great way to leverage what you've already got going.
I think that would be wonderful.
And he's turning 90, so it would be perfect.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a combination of like H.R. What is this? Giger?
Yeah.
That's
really Giger.
Did you ever see that? Did you ever see that documentary where Stan was kind of going through his museum and
they're riding like a roller coaster together?
Yeah, and kind of going through like the
crazy
BPMs
stuff
and stuff like that. Yeah, really fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I have to really say, what has been a joy is to work with Stan and Brigitte together because they're really a force and they're really united in it's a team.
Yeah.
They're so sweet. And I think Brigitte really has worked so tirelessly in putting up the Grof Legacy training and putting this up on the website and compiling all of this and because she knows, right? So she knows that we need to memorialize this soon. And so we come from this tradition of very powerful couples, right? So like there's Alex and Alison Gray, there's Stan and Kristina, Stan and Brigitte, who is the
Sasha and Anne Schulgen,
Joe and Kyle Moore.
Right. Joe and
I'm
Kyle.
kidding.
Yeah. Elizabeth and Lenny. There's a lot of really powerful folks out there working in pairs. It's really awesome. And yeah, you're right. Like Brigitte has been working like crazy, I believe. We've unfortunately not been able to connect too much with her, but maybe she'd be up for coming on at some point, because she does need to be highlighted for all that she's doing.
Yes.
Well, we're at about an hour 10. Is there anything that we may have missed?
Well, I think we covered pretty much everything. I definitely want to encourage people to watch the film.
Yes.
And have a look at the website. And we have other books also in the pipeline. But definitely something we want to encourage is that if you read a specific book about psychedelics, about psychedelic therapy that you think would be impactful, having translated in different languages, feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss. We are really open to make this a collaborative project. We are building a network with different publishers in different parts of the world. And like Stan and Brigitte introduced us to the publisher in Korea that translated the book in Chinese, and with a bunch of other publishers around the world from Russia. And so I think this network is very valuable because there might be other books that will be translated in the future. And some of them might come from somebody else. Might even be books that we haven't read yet, but somebody might reach out and say, I think it would be interesting. Or like, I come from this country and then I moved to United States, but I would love my parents to be able to read this book in their own language because they don't speak English. And we can work out something together.
Awesome. And so the website is psychedelicliteracy.org. Correct?
Yes.
And then if anybody wants to make a donation, there's a donate button there that will bring you to the Rudolf Steiner Foundation. And then there's a drop-down menu there, and click Other for where to donate. And then in the little notes section, you would put in Psychedelic Literacy Fund.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Yes, exactly. And then you can contact us. There's a contact
form if you have any questions
on our website.
You have any ideas.
Any ideas if you would like to share your story, or
and also something listener can do to support this is just to share the podcast, and some people in their network, might be interested. So
Yep. And we like it when you do that too. So just share the episodes you like, especially this one.
We will. For sure.
All right. Jonas and
I do have one last question, Joe.
Sure.
As a Coloradan, are you jealous of Oregon for stealing the spotlight this year?
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, I'm thankful.
No. Oh, good.
So
we are too.
Yeah, no, really, I want less people moving to Colorado. It's been a little crazy the last 4 or 5 years. It's a beautiful place, but it's only so beautiful if there's a appropriate proportion of people to wild lands.
Yes, absolutely. Well, everyone can just stay put, and the psychedelic renaissance will come to them.
Or make it happen, Take up, the battle flag in terms of legal documents to your local and regional governments. It's a great way to do it.
I was going to say, since we might be releasing this on Christmas on Friday, and in regard to Oregon, we just heard some really sad news about Sherry Eckhart dying, who was part of IP34 and trying to get these initiatives passed. So, some sad news. Just want to toss that out there. Nobody has heard that.
Was that just yesterday or the day before, Kyle?
I saw the release yesterday. I'm not too sure if it happened any days prior, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, pretty recent. So within the last couple of days of December 21 here when we're recording. So
rest in peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, keep the fight. We're all thinking of you. And
yes.
Yeah. Thank you for your work, Sherry and Tom. Yeah. All right. So sad note to pause on, but here we are anyway.
Yes. We're getting through it.
Yeah.
Step by step.
Jonas and Kristina, I really appreciate you coming on. I definitely want to have you on again.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure.
Let's see what happens, and let's make sure your books get out there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And we want to wish you happy holidays.
Yes.
Yeah, it's happy holidays, everybody, and happy New Year.
Buon Natale.
Buon Natale.
And there you have it. What did you think? Let us know over at Psychedelics Today, email@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And, if you don't want to email, maybe hit us up on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. There's a lot of platforms, a lot of ways to get at us, and we'd love to hear from you. We've also got a really cool Facebook group of 4,600 people, maybe more now. It's just Psychedelics Today group on there, and you will probably learn some interesting stuff. Also, just a reminder, I know you've heard about it plenty, but our 8-week Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists course starts up on January 7. Seats are filling up. We probably will sell this one out. And if you want to really secure your spot, sign up soon. If you want to sign up, website is psychedeliceducationcenter.com. All right. Thank you all for listening. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your end of year and holidays, whatever you're into. And we will talk to you on the next episode. Until next time, it's Joe Moore signing off for Psychedelics Today. Bye-bye.